the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a jam-packed Locked On Cardinals, which is brought to you by Peacock and Williamson. NFL analyst Brian Peacock, former NFL scout Matt Williamson hosts Locked On's Peacock and Williamson every Monday through Friday. Brian and Matt will give you the national perspective all around the NFL, covering the latest news, insight on every game, team, and move around the league. Get your picks, previews, and much more every weekday with Peacock and Williamson's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I just flew right into it because we don't have any time. We've got our guy Johnny Venerable from Revenge of the Birds, of course, writes for Revenge of the Birds. He's on the podcast, Revenge of the Birds podcast with Blake Murphy. Of course, my co-host Alex Clancy. And today we wrap up our conversation with Stephen Baca, longtime friend, trainer of Kyler Murray. He's going to give us some insight into how Kyler Murray is preparing for his third NFL season, because we hadn't heard a peep from Kyler Murray about how he was preparing for the 2021 season. Now, Stephen Baca is going to provide us with more than a peep on today's episode. Also, a well-respected, NFL analyst, expert. He said some pretty surprising things about Kyler Murray and his ability to throw the football. We'll get into that. But, Johnny, welcome back. We're excited to talk to you each and every Friday. We're excited to have you on our new YouTube channel for Locked On AZ Cards. Jake Butt, a guy who worked out with the Arizona Cardinals, the tight end position, continues to not have really anybody that this team can honestly rely upon to catch passes and move the football. You wrote about just the futility of the position recently. I don't know what your thoughts are. What do you think? Is it just Zach Ertz or bust at this point for this organization?
Hey, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you again for having me on. And it's interesting because we had been scanning the waiver wire and the free agent market for a capable tight end since probably February for the Cardinals to add on, especially once they didn't bring back Dan Arnold in March. And when they misjudged the tight end market, I really think that you could argue that Steve Keim did misjudge the market. I mean, you look at what New England did, signing, two of the top tight ends early in free agency for big money deals. And that inflated, I think, Dan's value a little bit. Carolina goes out and pays him, I think, $2 to $8 million over 2 years. I mean, it's quality money. And so the Cardinals were kind of left staggering a little bit. And then we transitioned right from that to, hey, Kyle Pitts is an option for them, so don't worry. And then when that was kind of debunked, I think maybe we had some question marks as to whether or not they take one later. They passed on the Penn State tight end Pat Fryerman in the second round. And then, of course, the position gets watered down further and further the longer you go on the draft. And now we sit here and, post-draft, they were very candid saying they're going to look for options at the position over the course of the summer. And I think Jake Butt fit that mantra. But again, Jake Butt has not been healthy since his early time at Michigan. He's never proven anything in the NFL. What my frustration with this is, Arnold to me was one of the lone players that since Cliff Kingsbury has arrived, that he's elevated. I think you could make an argument for, of course, Kyler Murray, Chase Edmonds, and then Dan Arnold. Dan Arnold was drafted by Sean Payton, was a fifth-round pick from a Division III school. And then they had to cut him. They had a Super Bowl level roster, but they wanted to stash him away on their practice squad late in the season. And the Cardinals claimed him in December of 2019, and he responded, over 100 yards in the final 3 games that year. And then you pivoted to this past year in 2020. And while I think that the media hype train with Dan Arnold, based on what we were hearing out of camp, was probably a little over-exaggerated. I mean, he still had the most receiving yards and touchdowns for a tight end since 2013 when Rob Hauser had 454. So, again, you're not asking for much from the position. But,
right.
Again, every time I watch all 22 of this team, when the Cardinals needed a big completion on third down, it was either DeAndre Hopkins or it was Dan Arnold. And so, and especially in the red zone, he had developed a nice rapport with Kyler Murray. Now that's gone. And, I hear from the fan base pretty frequently a couple of different options. Either move Larry Fitzgerald to tight end at age 33, which is, it's not even worth responding to, or don't worry, we're just going to run 10 personnel 100% of the time. They don't need a quote unquote pass catching tight end. Of course, they've got Max Williams last year who missed time, but he's a predominantly blocking tight end. I think his max for a season with the Cardinals is roughly 200 yards receiving. And so, yeah, they're really out of options unless they deal for somebody, unless you're a fan of like a Trey Burton or somebody like that. The Zach Ertz situation is interesting. I think it makes the most sense. He's got ties to Arizona. It's just dealing with Howie Roseman, the GM for Philadelphia, is always tricky. They don't have a 4th-round pick next year. Of course, they moved it to move up for Marco Wilson this year. I think a 3rd is probably a little too rich if you were to ask the majority of the fan base. I would have no problem with it. I'm not sure the Cardinals are going to be keen to do that, especially with the money that's tied up. Ertz is owed $12 million this year. There are people who think he's just going to be outright released. That clearly it hasn't happened yet. And then you've got, other lesser tier names, Njoku out of Cleveland. Maybe you could pry O.J. Howard from Tampa. They've just got an embarrassment of riches at the position. A couple other guys, are options. But I think Ertz is the most competent option to immediately come in. Listen, he was hurt last year, but he still had over 300 yards. Before that, he averaged just under 1,000 yards per season between 2017 to 2019. Somebody that you can consistently count on for at least 5+ touchdowns. And that's with an inconsistent quarterback in Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. And I think the people who are dismissing this do not remember how much of a focal point at times Dan Arnold was and how many targets he received. And for the people who were clamoring on about, 10 personnel, which if you don't know is 4 wide receivers set in a single back, Rondale Moore hasn't played a full season since 2018. That's not realistic to expect out of the gate. AJ Green, he could be completely shot at this point. And then you're overly relying on Hopkins, and then Christian Kirk's too inconsistent. You have to have somebody else. And, whether it's Ertz or Burton or Njoku, I don't care who it is, but what they're trotting out right now is not good enough in 2021's NFL.
I used to think, Zach Ertz would be an interesting choice, obviously, depending on the money and if you can move it around, if you have to add some dummy years, extend him, whatever, and what the cost would be if they don't cut him. But I'm starting to think that the moves they made this offseason were more important. Like the Cardinals had a lot of holes. You needed getting a reliable pass rusher, and J.J. Watt kind of came out of nowhere. You got your center for hopefully the next 3 or 4 years, 5 years, depending on him staying healthy. You got a wide receiver too. That's who they targeted. At least Steve Keim had a plan. And Steve Keim doesn't seem to always look like he has a plan. At least he had a plan. Now with tight ends, with Dan Arnold, I don't necessarily agree. Yeah, he was fine in the red zone. He had a handful of touchdowns. Took away looks from DeAndre Hopkins, which may have been counterproductive, even though they ended in touchdowns in the grand scheme of DeAndre Hopkins as an Arizona Cardinal. But what I remember from Dan Arnold is bad false starts in inopportune times and really bad drops down the stretch. The reason why I remember that is because New Orleans Saints fans were in my mention saying this is why he's not a New Orleans Saint anymore. Even Ross Jackson, our fearless leader here for the NFL portion of Locked On of the Locked On Podcast Network, he's Locked On Saints guy. He's like, yeah, that's why he's not a New Orleans Saint anymore. That's what I remember.
He was another guy that was making the switch. It's not an easy transition. As much as people say, you just throw on some weight and you block a little. Larry Fitzgerald's a great blocker. He could block at the tight. No, it's completely different. Like we've seen guys just get eaten up and spit out at the NFL level just because it's so important. It's such a different game, especially blocking on the line and having to pick up those edge. You're going to put a 37-year-old Larry Fitzgerald to pick up an edge rusher. That's how you're going to send him off into retirement. You're going to kill the guy. Like you're basically that's homicide right there. That's murder. You're murdering your franchise icon. I understand that he can be a threat. He can be a big body in the red zone and stuff like that. It's just not realistic. But I understand what Johnny's saying. And Alex, you were big on the Dan Arnold. the thing is, the options that they have right now, Ross Travis, a former basketball player, a guy that's been in the league since 2016. We're not talking about like they're trying this. This is his second season, 2016. He's been in the league a while. Hasn't done much. You've got, I love Max Williams. He runs like a Lego man. He can't like take a stride beyond like a half a step. Great blocking tight end. I think Jake Butt could have been like the successor to the Max Williams because he's an underrated blocker. But as far as playmakers, man, that's why a guy like Trey Burton's intriguing, because we know that you can use him gadget plays, and it's an issue. And I do hear what you're saying though, Alex. I think that there were big, like building the lines, building the offensive line, getting Mason Cole moving his head twice a game, and getting called for penalties back to back. That was just, it was backbreaking.
Yeah, and I'm in no way saying that Dan Arnold should have been a priority over Rodney Hudson or J.J. Watt or anything, but to not have a plan, there's not a plan at the position, and I do think Keim misjudged the market for the position. I mean, the two guys that New England went and signed out immediately, Hunter Henry, and then the other name escapes me. I mean, they cleaned up that position got cleaned up. Yep, at like 48 hours into free agency. Even Kyle Rudolph didn't spend time in the market. Yeah. Yep. So it's just, it's one of those things where it's looked at as a luxury position, but you've got very competent, if not elite level tight ends within the division, of course, led by George Kittle. It's a difference maker that, the Cardinals just historically have never had. And I think that's why it's so dejecting for me to watch them put time in the development of Dan Arnold and then to just kind of cast it off and say, well, we're going to save $6 million. Okay, well, what's the go-to this year? Because I haven't seen you run effectively 10 personnel since you got to Arizona on a consistent basis, Cliff. But I have seen you utilize the tight end at times. And, say what you want about Dan Arnold. I mean, he was schemed open in a lot of ways. And so I think that that's a benefit if you find an athletic, comparison to be able to plug and play somebody who is also 6'5". And that's why I thought, okay, maybe they'll go with Freiermuth for somebody like that in the draft, a mid-round prospect that they can groom with Kyler, because I think Kyler benefits from that, especially with these targets that are over 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". And that's why I think Dan got so many targets. Cardinals are predominantly small outside of Hopkins and A.J. Green offensively, especially with Rondell Moore. And, of course, Zach Ertz certainly fits the bill. I think he's just under 6'5". So, I mean, they have options and they have time, most importantly. But I am just concerned that when the passing game is stagnant this year, of course, they're going to lean on the run game with the inclusion of Hudson and James Conner. You can't go for broke at that position and have nothing in-house, nothing that you can lean on. And again, Kingsbury's offense is, it's not simplistic enough, I don't think, for somebody to sign mid-season and pick it up right away. But then again, Dan Arnold did. So I'm anxious to see what they do. I just think that, Alex, to your point, when you go for broke in the offseason, you can't just have one huge glaring hole on your roster not filled before the year. Yeah.
Johnny Venerable, he joins us every Friday here on the Locked On Cardinals podcast. Bo Brock, Alex Clancy. Follow us all on Twitter at Clancy's Corner, at BOBRACK, at Johnny Venerable, and Locked On AZ Cards. You mentioned the 10 personnel, very respected, NFL experts. Thinks that's on the way for the Cardinals offense. And then he also takes a shot at the Cardinals franchise quarterback. We'll tell you who and what he said. It's all coming up. It's right here, the Locked On Cardinals podcast. So the Suns, they were dealt a pretty rough hand over this week with Chris Paul and the COVID-19 news. But the Phoenix Suns, they are in the Western Conference Finals. Excuse me. Anyway, Sixers, they're 3-point dogs tonight against the Hawks. You've got the Jazz and the Clippers. They are that game looks like it's going to be Clippers +2. You want some of the action? Well, BetOnline's the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Baseball season in full swing. Look, here's some betting insight. Bet against the D-backs on the road. They can't win. You can track all the action on BetOnline. Get all the latest news, odds, and info on your sporting needs, including Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and your UFC MMA action. Before the next pitch, tip basketball. Head over to BetOnline on your laptop, your cell. Check out all the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. And don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get in the game. Head over to the website, use your mobile device, and sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. You put in $100 or get $50 free dollars. Help build your stack. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. All right, so we're back here, Locked On Cardinals, Stephen Baca. We're going to round out that interview in the third segment today. Some really interesting things. Does Kyler Murray care about taking home some hardware? You're going to be surprised in Stephen Baca's answer. Johnny Venerable continues with us here. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock. So Alex pointed this one out to me. Johnny, you brought it up as well. I'm going to play the audio. Ross Tucker's great podcast. He had one, Greg Cosell on. I think it was today. And he had some things to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. Just listen, and this is what he had to say. It's pulling up nice and quick.
Kingsbury's background is air raid with 4 wide receivers. That's what he grew up with. Coaches coach what they know. He hasn't felt comfortable putting 4 wide receivers out there, meaning 10 personnel, 1 back and 4 wide. So what he's done over his first 2 years is play a lot more with tight ends and even 2 tight ends. But I think with what they did this offseason, Ross, with A.J. Green, with drafting Rondell Moore in the second round, I think what he feels now is he can line up and play the way he ultimately wants to. He can spread the field with 4 wide receivers. He has a quarterback that's incredibly dynamic as a runner, still needs to improve throwing the football. He has not been as good throwing the football as people might think, and that's based purely on tape study. But Kyler Murray is a dynamic runner. They're super effective in the red zone with their quarterback run game concepts. So I think I would expect to see them line up more out of 10 personnel, 4 wide receivers, and 1 back.
All right. Kind of a minute clip, but a lot to kind of take in there. Alex looks. Go ahead.
We are okay, Bo. I wish we could do an exercise in real time where every time Greg Cosell says Kyler Murray, you remove it and you put in Lamar Jackson. Tell me what the difference would be. He's talking as if Kyler Murray doesn't know how to throw a football. Now, listen, Greg Cosell his brain works differently than other humans do. He's been with NFL Films for 50 years, I think. He's like the Hubie Brown of NFL commentary. Hubie Brown's just like this zombie. I mean, he's been around for 50 years.
Hubie Brown like that.
Oh, he's great.
Like he loved Josh Rosen. Let's keep that in mind as we talk about his extensive film study.
Okay, well, fair enough. I mean, Josh Rosen did have one great game against Texas A&M at UCLA. So the breakdown I have here, but we talked about it, I believe, this week. The intermediate pass is what people are talking about. We have the dump down because that's the Cliff Baby special. The deep ball is there. He throws a very nice deep ball. The intermediate passing is where the issue is, the shortcomings. And I'm not convinced that it's not scheme and not play calling to put him in the best situation to succeed. Now, that may just be me not being able to see the forest through the trees, but I think the jury's still out on how great Kyler Murray can be as a passer. I do know he's better than what Greg Cosell just said he was.
Yeah, I don't really know who he's like. The context there was strange. Who are you comparing him to? Are you comparing him to like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson? Because I think we all agree like he's not on their level yet. God forbid he'd be improving, into his second year. This is an individual who has had improvements in jumps and completion percentage, 64 to 67, 3,700 yards to almost 4,000 yards passing. Interceptions stayed consistent at 12, which doesn't bother me, but increased his touchdowns +6 last year. Next Gen did an advanced study for Mr. Greg Cosell. He's the 3rd best deep ball thrower in the NFL. I'm not really sure where he's nitpicking outside of what Alex just mentioned. The intermediate passing game needs work. I think last offseason, because the hype train surrounding Kyler was unfairly just off the rails, that everybody is kind of taking subtle shots now and expects him to be Patrick Mahomes year 2 or, Lamar Jackson MVP year 2. And it's just like, hey, did you guys realize the Cardinals had the worst roster in the NFL when they drafted him in 2019? And he's got a college head coach, and his college head coach was fired by his alma mater. I mean, can we take a step back and just look at the fact that he put up over almost 5,000 yards in total offense, 40 plus touchdowns. To me, it's mind-boggling when people just continually, pile on this young man and just want him to be something that right now he's not, but it's still pretty damn good. It's still top 10 to 12 in the NFL. And I think that because he was the first overall pick and has unfairly been compared to teams and individual players that inherited Hall of Fame level head coaches like Andy Reid and John Harbaugh for their respective teams, he's supposed to snap his fingers and become, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes overnight. Yes, the intermediate passing game is still a concern. I would argue too, Alex, that it's a combination of personnel, which they went out again, added a couple receivers again, and then also interior pressure last year was an issue with Mason Cole, and Kyler was forced to step out of a disjumbled pocket more often than not. Now he's got Rodney Hudson, who is a supremely gifted, maybe the most gifted pass protecting center in all of pro football. Let's see if that helps the intermediate passing game. So I think that combination we'll see, a jump in production. Cliff has already mentioned that Kyler has mastered the offense. So does anybody think Kyler's not going to improve this year? And if he does improve, that's going to mean 30-plus passing touchdowns, 4,000 yards. Is that good enough for Greg Cosell? I'm just curious. He's 23 years old, or he was last year. It's interesting to me because, again, you listen to Greg Cosell, and he's a big fan of like Daniel Jones and some of these really lesser tier quarterbacks, and the nitpicking to me is outrageous right now.
No, I completely agree. I mean, you put Kyler Murray in, and I feel like it's kind of like the 2016 Cardinals, where the national media was all on this bandwagon, and they felt like they were burned by their performance. And then you've got Kyler Murray last year; he's got the expectations, you've got the bar, with an unrealistic expectation of him being Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, the third coming of that, and he has a decent season. He didn't win the MVP, and that's the worst takeaway. He had 37 total touchdowns last year. He took a major jump, and people feel burned from that, but he's still in the conversation as far as his skill set as those guys. And then we see these rankings where Kirk Cousins is ranked ahead of him. It just doesn't make sense. It's just a weird paradox that we're living in right now, and how they're evaluating a player with the skill set of Kyler Murray and what he's already done. He's each season, like, he's a Heisman winner. He's the number 1 overall pick. He's your rookie offensive player of the year, and then then last year he takes a major jump. He's answered the bell every time, and now they're like, oh, he's going to be stagnant in 2021. I don't understand that. Yeah. I don't. I wish we had more time to talk about it. Alex, maybe some closing thoughts before we get to Stephen Baca. Yeah,
I mean, just real quick, like, Kyler Murray is in front of everybody, leading the charge on a complete culture shift for a bad organization.
Absolutely.
So it's 2018 maybe made him look better in his rookie year than he was, because there was a college affiliate team playing in Arizona Cardinals uniform for 2018. So it might have had the pedestal a little bit too high to begin with. But this is really the rebirth of the Arizona Cardinals starting now. And it's just unfortunate money-wise that we've already had a couple of years of the quote-unquote cheap portion of Kyler Murray's contract. But this is the beginning. This is not coming to the end. Oh, no, what's going to happen? This is, the rebirth of the Arizona Cardinals, and Kyler Murray's leading the way.
Kind of grosses me out when you put it that way, but it's very poetic at the beginning. And I was kind of shocked it came out of your mouth.
I'm shocked your brain can't wrap your head around anything deep, Bo.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't know. I can't even look at you right now. It's so well put. I don't even, it's never happened in the history of this podcast. Johnny Venerable, he's going to join us next Friday. He's going to join us every Friday. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Johnny Venerable. Of course, reading his work, Revenge of the Birds, listening to him and Blake Murphy on the Revenge of the Birds podcast. Stephen Baca joins us next. How Kyler Murray's been preparing for the 2021 season, and more insight that the quarterback won't give you, but his longtime friend and trainer will. It's coming up. It's Locked On Cardinals. We've been telling you for years now about the best tasting protein bar ever. It's just, I'll eat one even if I don't need some extra protein. It's that delicious. It's a candy bar. It's a protein bar disguised as a candy bar. That's what we'll say. Built Bar. Did you know that Built Bar has 9 delicious flavors that you can always just hang your hat on? Coconut, almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel. If you check out their website, builtbar.com, you can see what limited time flavors that they have, usually always going. And those are always, unbelievable. and they're equally as delicious as they are healthy. 17 grams of muscle packing protein, 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. Right now, go to BuiltBar.com. Check them out. Use the promo code LOCK15. Get a mix box, and you can try a couple of the different flavors. You'll get 15% off your first order just using the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com.
Stephen Baca, at Baca_Nation, joining us here. Stephen, we talked about high school. We talked about college. Let's start. I want to ask you about the Dan Patrick interview. And this is something that is such a huge misconception about who Kyler Murray is still. And I'm sure you can attest to that more than anybody. What the hell happened?
Yeah, I love it. I love the question. So, let me start by saying this. My wife is an introvert. I'm an extrovert. Nobody understands Kyler like my wife Amanda. She'll always tell me when I say, maybe I'll tell Kyler to come talk to this group of kids at the school, and she'll say, you don't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. There is something we need to appreciate about the fact that Kyler is not really the guy that wants to be on Front Street. He doesn't want the attention. He doesn't need everyone looking at him. He doesn't want to have a big crowd where he talks. That's the way he is. Now, I'm different. I'm in front of people all the time. I love talking. I love that. But I think we got to appreciate the subtleties. And here's one of my pet peeves about the NFL is we think, okay, this guy's a quarterback. Let's put him in a box of who he needs to be. He needs to fit in line with this guy. He needs to lead like this guy. He needs to be on the front page screaming, talking to the media like this. Why? Why is that the way it's happening? If you're a guy that takes care of your business, your teammates love you, you handle your business off camera, why do you have to be a comedian or a rah-rah guy on camera? So when the Dan Patrick interview happened, there's a couple things that are at play, right? Kyler has a piece of information that every single person wants to know. Are you going to play baseball or are you going to play football? He was not going to unveil that at that moment, right? In his best interest, he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing, and there's always a team of people around him that are making sure we're making great decisions together. And at that moment, there was no plans to unveil, am I going to play baseball or am I going to play football? Every interview on Super Bowl Road was a witch hunt. So there is a piece of me that understands because of my wife. And here's the deal. I think there's this weird pressure that gets put on the quarterback in the NFL, and we think this is the way he needs to be. He needs to operate like this. He needs to speak like this. He needs to rah-rah like this. And we have these thoughts of this is what a quarterback is, when that really doesn't take into account the different people and the uniqueness that make them up that are playing that position. That's what I love about football is each guy's different, and Kyler's different than each quarterback. He's unique. And, so one of the things that I think surrounded that Dan Patrick interview is Radio Row in the Super Bowl. Everybody wanted to know one question. Are you playing football or are you playing baseball? Kyler is a smart guy. He knows when to speak, when not to speak. He's got a team of people around him that we help make good decisions and make sure that what we're doing is putting our best foot forward and then creating a platform that can create impact. That was not a weekend that he was ready to kind of unveil that information, right? And every question was circulated around, hey, are you going to play baseball? Or are you going to play football? Hey, but what are you going to do? Hey, but what are you going to do? And so what you saw is just he's a guy that's not going to BS you. He's not going to lie to you. He's not going to give you a bunch of fluff. So if you ask him and your questions are surrounded one topic, he's probably going to give you the one-word answer that he knows he's supposed to say, which is, hey, I haven't made a decision yet. And so I think if there could have been, and obviously Dan Patrick's the man. Like I'm not knocking his interview. Obviously that's what everyone wanted to know, and so I understand why they were asking that. I mean, we've been talked about before. Hey, this is going to be the question you get asked, obviously. But I think there was so much pressure on that decision, and we all want to find out what that is. Not enough about like, hey, let's figure out you as a guy, as a person. And so, in that, when he's kind of backed into that corner of, we're going to try 10 different strategies to get you to give us something about baseball or football. What you found is sort of a uncomfortable, like, one-word answers, right? And that's really what it was. It was real. It's who he is. He's not really super comfortable in a whole bunch of cameras. He's getting better. I'm not saying he's not comfortable in those positions, but when you're asking him to say something he knows he's not going to say, that's probably what you're going to get.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Stephen Baca, of course, friend of Kyler Murray's, trainer, Baca Nation, Baca_Nation on Twitter. He joins us here on the Locked On Cardinals podcast. With all that being said, kind of understand the introvert nature of Kyler Murray. My wife's the same way too, by the way, Stephen. Very quiet. We see the leadership qualities. You talked about it on yesterday's podcast, how he had the guys in that Allen High School huddle believing, the guys on the sideline, the guys at A&M in Oklahoma. Do you see that translating to the pro level? Do you think that guys are buying in and understand that he's going to be the one that's going to lead you with his play, not going to be rallying the troops on the sidelines, maybe like a guy like J.J. Watt's doing?
To that point, I think since the Dan Patrick interview, you would have to not be watching to see the maturity of how he handles conversations in the public, right? He's gotten better and better and better as he's gotten older. You got to realize the kid was 21 at that point, right? He's 21. He's only 24 years old. We think back to where we were like as 24-year-old kids and how we would handle that. So number one, of course, I see the subtle, quiet confidence where you look, if you're at the team and the guys in that locker room, they say, I know he's going to take care of his part, right? But I did see, there were several moments last year where you looked in the sidelines and there was moments of intense leadership where he's calling guys out, where he's saying this is unacceptable, where he's speaking. And I think that goes to the point of efficiency. He's not going to be the guy that just says things to say things. And what I love about that is when he does speak, you know that what he's saying is important. And so I think not only are you going to see that leadership continue to mature, but I think we've already seen how he does have fire, he does have passion, but man, it's just expressed differently than some guys. It's just not as boisterous and in front as some guys are. There's a lot to him behind the scenes that he doesn't show simply because there may be no reason to, right? And so I don't think his purpose is let me draw a bunch of attention to me. I think his purpose is let's make everybody better. And if that serves that purpose, then I'm certainly going to do that. And I think we saw plenty of moments on the sideline last year where you can point to and say, wow, that's a different side. That's a fiery moment. And so I don't think he's going to change. I think he's going to be who he is. And to me, if you're a Cardinals fan listening, you want Kyler operating at 100% Kyler efficiency. Because when he is who he is, he's number one. Number one does things on the field. He does things athletically that you just never seen in your life. So there's no reason to say, hey, we want him to change. We should embrace the person that he is, the way that he is, the leader that he is, the uniqueness that he is, and know when he's operating at 100% Kyler, that's the best version of himself that he's going to bring to the field. That's what you want if you're in the Cardinals organization, and no different in my opinion.
Yeah, well said, Stephen. Stephen Baca, a longtime friend and trainer, Kyler Murray, joining us here at Locked On Cardinals. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Follow Bo at Bob Rack. Follow me at Clancy's Corner. Follow Stephen at Baca_Nation. You're right. I mean, the growth is obvious, and people who don't see that aren't watching. Like, when going a little deep into where Bo and I were on draft night when he got drafted, we both looked at each other, and with introverts, this happens. We're like, does he want to be here? And it was kind of jarring initially because you're looking at number one overall picks like Cam Newton and Andrew Luck with the big smiles and the big personalities. You're like, the Cardinals were a college football team in 2018. Is he excited that he, to come lead this organization that has a history of failure for the most part? And then you see my moment when I realized that Kyler had arrived was when he was asked questions about kneeling during the national anthem around the Black Lives Matter movement during the offseason. And Bo and I are like, this dude is now an NFL quarterback. Like, the dude, now it's not about the topic. It was about the bravado in his voice. And I wonder if you saw that growth too, or you've known him for so long that it was just a matter of time before it came out.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing there is a movement that he's passionate about, right? he's passionate about certain qualities and things, and when he is, he'll speak up and he'll say something again that you gonna want to listen to. I have seen an incredible maturity since I've been working with him, like night and day as a human, not just athletically, because that's obvious, but in the way he relates to people. Here's one thing to note: when he comes in our training, our facility, we have a small facility. We're not the most fancy place. We consider ourselves the Walmart of training. We're going to do it cheaply, and we're going to do it as best as we can, and we're going to train a whole bunch of kids. We're not a big fancy facility where we train 5 kids. We train 300. We charge them a little bit, and we give them the best thing from their buck they can be. So we have a facility, and he comes in there, and there'll be a 6th grader working out, 10 feet from him. Here's what I love about Kyler. That 6th grader, 10 times out of 10, wants to take a picture, wants an autograph, wants to bother him. There's high-profile guys that would be annoyed by that. Every time. Stops. Music off. Shakes hands. Picture. Talks. Ask what position he's playing. Relational. Like, that's the guy, and I tell him all the time, the most proud I am of you, Kyler, is when you're impacting young people. I love when you play and your MVP status getting up there. I love that. But I love the person way more. And so that maturity has always been there. But I think it's growing into him understanding, hey, I don't have to be anyone else. I don't have to please or do anything to make other people happy. And I think as humans, we all should be that way. We all should know this is the person I am. And no matter what kind of pressure I get from outside sources to be somebody that I'm not, I'm going to wholeheartedly hold on to who I am and be unashamedly me. So I love the connectability that he has, not when the press is there and he's, talking to pressers or he's getting interviewed, but when he's just being a human, like being a guy. He relates to these young kids that come in our facility. He makes their whole month, their life, signs whatever they want, takes a picture. And so that's the guy that I think, in maturity has understood kind of the impact that he has, takes that seriously, and then owns that position. That to me is a leader. That's who he is. And so I've seen that maturity. I think every Cardinals fan has probably seen the maturity since he's been there going on year 3. And I know that, all he has from that side of things is the ceiling as far as the sky is the limit for him to grow. He's got so much room to continue to grow, but he's already grown so much, and I'm really proud of him for that.
Have you been shocked that there's been, a couple articles and just people questioning his work ethic this offseason?
I love that. Before I called you, Kyler FaceTimed me. No, in the summer, this is the deal. He knows I can train you when I can because I'm going to work 13 hours a day. And maybe one day in the future, we'll see if things change. But the summer is like, that's primo time. We're training all day. And he knows the deal. Like, I think that's funny. Like, what kind of Heisman guy would understand that he's not my top priority at times? Isn't that weird? Like you would think, but we're guys. He understands that. He FaceTimed me just now and said he's back for a few weeks or however long. He FaceTimed me. Hey, can you meet me at the facility? I'm like, Kyler, I'm in traffic. It's 5 o'clock. I woke up at 4:45. I got to get him at 4 again. I have a 2-month-old child and a 20-month-old child. Like, I can't today, dude. That's just the way it is. There has not been one day. The question of work ethic, it's ridiculous. There's not been one day since he graduated high school that he's in town, he's available, that he hasn't texted me and said, what time? What time? What time? Saturday. What time? Kyler, look, I got to spend time with my family at some point, dude. Like, I love you, man, but I got to hang out with my wife. She's going to divorce me if I leave so much. So I think it's funny. I'm not a big documenter. I don't film him and throw him up on my feeds, 24/7. And he's not really that way either. So when I saw someone say, hey, like, what has he been doing? He hasn't been working. I'm like, wait, what? Why would that be the assumption? Like I said, when the whistle blows, there is nobody that takes it more seriously, that works more intentional. That's the best word you can describe. Intentional. That works more intentional than this dude. And it's a nonstop, relentless addiction to being the best. He wants to be the greatest. And I said this in an interview last year. There was one moment where I told him, hey, listen, MVP status is what we're working for. And he stopped me and he said, I don't care about that. I want Super Bowls. This is the guy he is, man. He wants to win. He loves winning. There's nothing in life he loves winning more. We go bowling together. He's talking so much trash about beating me. And if he wins, it's nonstop on my head. When we play chess, he wins. Madden, all he wants to do is win. And so he knows anything that he can do to get that competitive edge, he's going to do. The work ethic questioning, man, it's crazy. That's crazy. I have to make sure that we have the proper recovery for him. Because from a sports performance standpoint, there is a law of diminishing returns, right? If we work our body into the ground, we're not going to get the most out of it, right? So I'm having to put the brakes on him. Hey, look, man, this day is a rest day. Sit at home, take it off, don't throw. We need your body to get acclimated and recover. So it's just crazy that that's even a talking point because I've got 6 years of evidence to go against that.
Just for the record, we agree with you. Just for the record, we agree with you. Stephen Baca, longtime friend and trainer of Kyler Murray, joining us here on Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy Bobrock. Follow Stephen at Baca_Nation. Let's fast forward here. We can talk football. We can talk X's and O's all day, but we watch Kyler and we've seen plenty of film, and so does everybody who listens to our podcast. That's not what we're here for. I want to ask you specifically. The biggest play in his career so far, with the biggest lights on it, was the Hail Murray. The Hail Mary at the end of the game. Okay, the play was cool. It was super weird that he didn't see the play. He turned around and all he did was put his hands up. Who cares? When I saw who Kyler Murray was the sentence, and I'm going to botch it, but I'll say I'm paraphrasing. After the game, during the press conference, he said, to win a game and then get to go play video games with my friends, that's a good day. And that's it. And that was the mic drop. What the hell is he talking about? There was no excitement, nothing. I mean, that was one of the most. Now it got nominated for best play for the ESPYs. I think that was today or yesterday. Is there ever a sentence that describes Kyler Murray more than that one?
No, there's really not. And this is the part. There were several people, scouts from different teams, that contacted me and asked about Kyler. And I told him this every time. This is the best guy to lead your franchise. Here's why. He cares about winning more than anything else. He'll eat, sleep, and breathe football. And when he's not playing football, he'll be in his room playing video games or sleeping. Here's my question. What more do you want? What would you want your guy to do? Do you want him out running around causing trouble in the streets? Do you want him going to clubs, doing things? That's the thing. As soon as an athlete does that, what do we all say? Oh, he's not focused. Look at him, he's partying. So we can't have it both ways, right? We can't get mad at guys that go out in the town and do things and then also criticize guys who are just about their business. Kyler is a guy who is business focused. He wants to win. He wants to eat, sleep, and breathe football. And when he's not doing that, he wants to play video games. If it's me and I have a franchise and I have an option, I got a quarterback who is ultra talented, who's a guy who's a subtle leader. He doesn't draw attention to himself. He's going to always control his business. He's going to perform and bring it every day. He's going to eat, sleep, breathe winning. And when he's not here, I know he's going to be in his room. To me, that's the best of both worlds. Like, what more would you want out of your guy? You know he's not going to go do something stupid, get hurt. He's not going to get in trouble. Like, those are the things that I think Cardinals fans, if I can speak to them directly, I think you should be appreciative of that rather than sit and question and be like, man, what's up with this guy? Be appreciative that the only thing he cares about is winning. Whether that's playing a video game or playing football, he just cares about winning. And outside of that, he's going to sleep. Like, he never got to worry. I love it.
We could interview Stephen Baca all day. Tremendous insight. I highly recommend you check out yesterday's episode where we talked to him mainly about the amateur years, high school and college, and then today more about his NFL years. And one more question. I just want another Texas boy I want to bring into the conversation before we let you go, because I don't feel like Cardinals fans know enough about their relationship. They're tied at the hip because they came into the organization at the same time. But do you have any insight, Stephen, on the relationship between Kyler Murray and head coach Cliff Kingsbury?
Yeah, I know that when he was at Allen, Cliff made a really good relational equity build trust. He really built a lot of trust with Kyler. I know that Kyler told me, hey, I really love this guy. When he was junior, senior, he really, really, and I think there was a lot of speculation to whether he was going to go to Tech just because of Cliff. And that speaks to the relationship that he had with Cliff. He spoke highly of him since he was a junior. And there was a really big moment when Cliff was going to get hired and we didn't know what was going to happen, that was kind of like, oh my gosh, I could be with the guy that I really wanted to be with in college. And that was kind of a guy that he had created such a relational bond. You know, that recruiting piece, can get tough. And you can kind of have the head coaches that call you, and there's some that really strike a chord with you relationally. And I think that was what I could say about Cliff and Kyler is he spoke to that relational ability that Cliff had to connect with him, that he really saw value in their friendship and in their relationship. So when those two, were going to get together in the NFL, I thought it was a perfect match. I was super excited for both of them. And I know that Kyler thinks super highly of Cliff, loves the guy. They've got a great relationship, and I'm really excited to see it continue to grow and what they can do on the field in year 3.
Tremendous insight. This can't be the last time we have him on the podcast. Stephen Baca, of course, follow him on Twitter at Baca_Nation. Of course, check out performancecourse.com. Man, Stephen, thank you so much, man. We appreciate all this. And like I said, we got to do it again.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Anytime.